Stop talking about comic books or I'll kill you. I don't care if the Hulk could defeat the Man of Steel.
Hey there, comic fans. Bullseye Bob here, and welcome to Everything Comics. And of course, this is another episode of Having Comics with My Coffee. It's actually the 40th episode. Can't believe we're 40 episodes in already, honing in on that episode number 50. And hey man, I'm having a good time. So thanks for joining me today. Of course, this is Having Comics with My Coffee, which is the show where we get together in my house in the Bob Cave, drink some great coffee, and I talk about the comics that I picked up this week. And of course, I'm talking about the comics I picked up this week on October 7th on New Comic Book Day. And this is I don't want to say a great week in comics, because I had some issues with some of my comics. I got shorted on some of my comics, but there's some real goodness in there as well, and so we'll get into those in just a second. First of all, I just want to talk about the coffee that I'm drinking this morning. I wish I could say that I'm drinking coffee from the Refuge, but I'm actually drinking just straight donut shop coffee from my Keurig, with some sugar-free vanilla sweetener in it, and it's pretty dang good. Of course, normally the coffee is brought to us by the Refuge Coffee House, the official coffee house of Everything Comics. They are located at 9217 Southeast Foster Road, right here in Portland, Oregon. They're a great coffee shop, and if you're ever in town, it's definitely a place that you're going to want to stop off. Let me know you're here. We'll stop and get coffee together. We'll talk about comics, talk about whatever you want, but it'll be a good time. So anyway, check out the Refuge. Okay, so I really don't have a lot of announcements this week, but we're just going to go ahead and get right into those. If you notice on the screen, there is a timestamp if you want to skip the announcements and just go straight to the reviews. That's perfectly fine to do so. So here's our first announcement. As you can see, I'm here in the Bob Cave. I announced last week that I will no longer be filming the show in the Refuge Coffee House. I'm kind of sad about that. I really loved filming from there. I thought it was kind of unique to film my comic book show within a coffee shop right here in Portland. But good for them. They have grown, and it's just too loud. The ambient noise with those vaulted ceilings really creates a very difficult atmosphere to use sound in. And then not only that, but I think their coffee maker is a little bit louder. And so great for them that they've grown and they've got so much business and traffic coming in and out the door. I'm really happy for them. Of course, Keith and Kim, thank you again very much for letting me film there. We will not stop filming there. We'll still have special episodes going forward, but the mainstay show, Having Comics with My Coffee, will no longer be filmed at the Refuge, but I'll be right here inside the Bob Cave. I wish them all the best, and of course they'll always remain the official coffee house of Everything Comics, and they've got some great coffee, guys. And so for the next announcement, as always, I tell you this, I am on another show. That's right, I'm on the Comics with Bueller channel every Monday morning, 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, on the brand new Coffee and Comics show. This is a show where I get together with my good buddy Bueller, and we talk about some of the hottest topics in comic books today. Every week he drops a preview video on Wednesdays on New Comic Book Day that shows you every comic book that's coming out the following week. And you don't want to miss that preview show. If you have your normal pull list, this is going to show you stuff that you might not have in your pull list, maybe something that you forgot, or just kind of showing you everything that's out there. Variant covers, stuff from independent comics, stuff from the big two, but pretty much everything that you're going to want on the following week. And on that video, he'll pose a question that we will discuss on the brand new Coffee and Comics show on Monday. All he asks you to do is leave a comment down in the comment section, and we'll use your comments to drive our conversation. It's a fun time. You don't want to miss it. Again, it's Monday morning, 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Comics with Bueller channel. Be there or be square. Okay, so before we get into our reviews, we always start with our cover of the week. This week's Cover of the Week is brought to you by TKO Studios. That's right, TKO is bringing out a lot of great comic books right now. Go check out their website. The link is down in the description. If you see something you like there, enter the code EVERYTHING20. You get 20% off of your purchase. They have a lot of great stuff coming out, brand new. They have a third wave of comic books that are going to be dropping here soon. But go check them out. They got a lot of great stuff over there. So this week's Cover of the Week comes to us from Gods and Myths Quarterly #1, Ares. And this comes from Zenescope Studios. This is the Royal variant. And the Zenescope has been putting out some great covers week over week. Haven't shown them any love yet, but when I saw this one, I just thought it was a phenomenal cover, showing Ares in all his glory there. I love the color. I love the line work. And like I said, they've been coming out with some just amazing covers. And so I just wanted to show them some love today. There it is, Gods and Myths Quarterly #1. I think this is the 3rd or 4th volume of that particular title that they put out. But I actually have never read them, so I don't know how good they are. But they're sure putting out a lot of great covers just week over week. And so there it is in all its glory. Hope you enjoyed that one, folks. Okay, so let's get on with the reviews. And the first book this week comes from Marvel Comics, and it is The Rise of the Ultraman #2. This one written by Kyle Higgins and Matt Groom, and the artwork is by Francesco Manna. And so this book took a turn that I wasn't expecting. Of course, last month was the very first issue, and we had kind of a little bit of a twist on the original story from 1966, which I was a huge fan of. And but that original story, you basically had this organization called the USP, the United Science Patrol, and they basically guard the Earth from extraterrestrial threats. And so in that very first episode, way back in the 60s, you had this guy named Hayata who was on patrol. This alien ship comes into the atmosphere, and another ship is chasing it, and he actually crashes into that ship and ends up dying. Well, in that ship is this creature guy thing called Ultraman, and he basically accidentally kills Hayata, feels bad about it, and allows Hayata to live as his avatar on Earth, and gives him this thing called a beta capsule with which he can turn into Ultraman for a short period of time to battle kaijus and all kinds of things. It was such a great show when I was a kid, loved it. And so in this book, it kind of puts us in familiar territory. You have the USP, you have another character named Hayata, Shin Hayata. We still haven't found out if that is an ancestry, like a grandson or a son of the original Hayata, or if this is just a brand new character altogether. I don't know yet. They haven't really fleshed that out. But in the first book, we have kind of the same thing. A kaiju shows up, and while they're battling this kaiju, this sphere comes down, and it has the Ultraman in it, or an Ultra as they call him, and Shin ends up firing on this particular craft, and badly wounds or hurts this Ultraman. And while the sphere is there, Shin goes up and touches it, and this explosion happens, and that's kind of where we're left. And so I was expecting to see Ultraman in all his glory inside of this book, and we get little smatterings of it, but that's not what actually happens. As we find out, when he touched that sphere, basically it put both of their lives in jeopardy. Of course, Ultraman was already hurt from being fired upon, but with this explosion, now it's like they're both dying. And Ultraman basically says it doesn't have to be that way, that they can merge, which kind of reminds us of the old 60s show. But there's this conversation about who's going to be in control. And that's kind of an interesting twist on the original story. But by the end of the book, we have resolution as to who's going to be in control, who's going to be like the main force on Earth between an Ultra and a man coming together as Ultraman. And anyway, I thought it was a great twist. Again, if you don't get into the main characters of the book besides Ultraman, like the USP Force, the character of Shin Hayata, and some of the others, if you don't flesh those out, then all you're doing is waiting for Ultraman. And so I really think that they did a good job in developing some of these characters, and I think that was the right way to go, because if you don't, then just Ultraman battling kaiju doesn't make for a good or compelling story. You got to have some things going on around it, and so I think they've done a good job with that. Anyway, if you haven't checked this book out yet, I would say definitely check it out, but keep in mind that you're not going to see the big Ultraman reveal probably until issue 3. They'll show little smatterings of what he looks like, and of course you see him on the cover and all that. But that's where we're at inside of this book, and I'm really enjoying it so far. So there you have it. Okay, so on to our next book, and that is We Only Find Them When They're Dead, issue number 2 from Boom Studios. This one written by Al Ewing, and the art by Simone DeMeo. And first off, let me say that I wasn't a huge fan of the first book. I mean, I loved the concept, and but for me, the book just had some problems. I know others love this book, and to each his own. Everybody has their own tastes, but so far the book just hasn't been for me. You know me, I love great color. I love dynamic color palettes, and this book is full of them. It's got some of the greatest color palettes I've ever seen. But this is one of those times when I do think that the colors detract from the actual artwork, because there are places where I can't really tell what's going on. And that's a problem. That is definitely a problem for a book like this. And then, the big thing about this book is they only find these gods, these celestials, after they've died. And I think that's the big mystery, is why are we only finding them when they're dead? But I was expecting some big reveal on what these gods were and what they looked like. And so far, in the first book, when I got there, it was very anticlimactic for me. It kind of reminded me of something you'd find in an anime show. I think one like Valkyrie 9. I'll put a picture up on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. It just looked like one of those characters, but huge and dead out in space, like you'd find Galactus or something. And so it's kind of anticlimactic, and but I like the concept of, when they find these big celestials, there are people who go out and mine the resources from them, kind of like what you saw in Guardians of the Galaxy, when the big skull nowhere, and they just mine all the resources out of the celestial skull. Kind of the same type of thing. And the main characters inside of this book are actually mining the flesh off of the face of one of these things. But really, when it comes down to it, there's nothing so far in the first or the second book that's made me get behind any of the characters, and that's a problem. And there's a couple of places where it shows different timestamps, like different places in time. I couldn't tell the difference between one or the other. It just seemed like one continuation of the story. And so that was confusing. And, again, I like the concept, but the artwork and the way the story is set up, it just hasn't been my cup of tea so far. Now, you know me, I love great artwork, and there is some great artwork inside of this, but the artwork to me feels like still frames from an anime show, rather than normal comic book line work. And I don't know, there's something about that bothers me as well. It just didn't feel like something that was drawn for a comic book, rather than it looked like stills that was taken from a show. And I know that's probably not the case, but that's what it felt like, and it kind of lowered the bar for me on this book. I don't want to ding it too much, because I know there's a lot of people who really like it. Always check things out for yourself, but so far this book is just not my cup of tea. And here we are in issue 2, and I was just as disappointed as I was in issue number 1. That's my opinion on it. So there you have it, folks. Maybe I'll pick up issue number 3. We'll see. But that's where I'm at with it. Okay, so on to our next book, and we have Decorum, number 5 from Image Comics. This one written by Jonathan Hickman and art by Mike Huddleston. Okay, so here is another book that I am starting to get frustrated with. I mean, the thing I love about this book is it takes chances. The artwork inside of it is absolutely dynamic. I don't think you can ding this book for the artwork. It takes some of the most beautiful pages. Mike Huddleston is doing some great work on it. You have some pages that are just a kind of a monotone color palette, but the line work is just so dynamic and fluid. I love it. And then you got these pages that are just absolute works of art interspersed in between them, and that stuff is great. But here we are on book 5, and I'm really still not sure what the main story is on this book. I mean, we've had so many different places where you've had these things kind of fleshed out like part of a larger narrative, but we never seem to get back to whatever that narrative is. There's different places that they've shown, like in different parts of the galaxy, where wars are happening or unrest is happening, and it doesn't seem to be connected at all. And then, of course, you have Jonathan Hickman, who does an encyclopedia kind of visual, world building type thing where he's got maps and graphs and all kinds of stuff, which I always enjoy. But in this particular book, everything he's put out really doesn't connect yet or makes any sense yet. And so I'm still left with this place of, what is the story about? I know in the first book we had this assassin who has decorum. She has a certain sense of decor or propriety that she uses in her work, and she takes this girl under her wing, and throughout all the books so far, we've had some training and kind of a fleshing out of this secret society that she works for, and that's all great. But with all the other stuff that's being built around it, you just get the feeling that that's not the main story. It's going to be part of it, I guess, at some point, or it'll blast into what the actual narrative is. And I really hope that when it gets there, it pays off, because I love just about every element of this book so far, except the story, just because here we are in issue 5, and I don't think we've actually even stepped into even a piece of what that larger narrative is. And so at this particular point, I'm going to stay on the book just because of just how incredible it is. But I'm starting to really get frustrated with it because, again, I have no idea what he's actually trying to do with this series. And so there you have it. What do you think about it? Have you been reading it? Do me a favor, leave a comment down in the comment section. Maybe you can change my mind about it at this point. But so far, like I said, issue number 5, and I'm starting to get impatient as to where they're going with this. So there you have it. Okay, so our next book is Lock and Key in Pale Battalions Go, issue number 2. Of course, this one is from IDW, written by Joe Hill, and art by Gabriel Rodriguez. So here we are, issue 2, and this was a very solid read. I loved the last book, which kind of showcased the history of the Locke family, and we can see that they have kind of been proprietors or owners of Key House for a lot longer than I would have suspected. But it's kind of a cool dynamic, and so we get to see the grandfather or great-grandfather of the family, John, or do they call him Little Jack Locke. And so we get this kind of story where we're in the midst of World War I, and Jack wants to go to war, but he's still too young to, and so he knows the power of the keys, and so he starts setting out to gather up some of the most powerful keys so that he can go out and affect the war. And that's what happens. He gets the Anywhere key, which you can go anywhere with, and then he has another key which can affect your appearance and age. So he can appear as an older person, and then he takes a bunch of other keys that I've never seen before, and he is setting out to use them to use them in battle, and that's what we get inside of this book. So I'll have to say, out of all the books in Lock and Key, this was my favorite one as far as the artwork goes. Gabriel Rodriguez really outdid himself. I think some of the pages are just so incredible. It's some of the best stuff that he's ever done. It's like a step up from the normal stuff. And the coloring, I don't know who the colorist was. I didn't look that up before we got on the show. But there's some things that they did with the coloring that just really stood out and really added to that creepiness of a good Lock and Key story. So that's what we get. We get some of the horrors of World War I battle. And if you don't know anything about history from that era, that was probably one of the most gruesome and bloody wars ever in the history of mankind. And then you take the horror that is World War I, and then you add the powers of these keys and large-scale battle. It was incredible. And it's just dynamic. There's some great callbacks in history, and I'm really, really enjoying this book. This, like I said, to me, was a cut above. It almost made my pick of the week, but it didn't, so let's move on and see what did. Okay, so on for our next book, and we have Thor, number 8 by Marvel Comics. This one written by Donny Cates, and the art by Aaron Cooter, I think that's his name. Okay. So these last 2 issues of Thor felt like some type of interlude or filler. And I can pretty much guarantee that's kind of what it is, because we got a new artist for these 2 issues, and next issue we have Nick Klein coming back. Which I can't wait for that, because just with these last 2 issues, I missed the guy's artwork. But we have Thor wanting to test out what's going on with Mjolnir, and so he basically tosses it down to Earth with a note on there to call Tony Stark, which I thought was funny. But we have in the last issue not only Tony Stark getting called, but some old man off the street picking up the hammer, and that's kind of where we left off, looking like we were going to get a new Thor. And so inside of this issue, they kind of fleshed that out a little bit more. We have Tony actually picking up the hammer. We have a scene where he just clocks Thor with it, which I thought was so out of character. And then we have this kind of down to earth, kind of heartfelt, older, broken down guy, becoming Thor for a day. And, look, I don't mind, one and done stories or, stuff that's a little more heartfelt. But this is Donny Cates, and I expect a little more out of him. I really didn't enjoy this particular story, or how trite it was. It was like, and that's the best way I can explain it. It was really trite. So I think it was out of character, especially after what just happened. And so it kind of took away from my enjoyment of it, and didn't feel like it was really truly part of the larger narrative, and kind of felt like Cates, I don't know, maybe he took vacation and thought this would be cool. I didn't enjoy it. And so, I love Thor. I love what Donny Cates has been doing with him. But this just felt completely off compared to what had just happened. And I don't mind a good interlude, a good heartfelt story if you want to take it in that direction. But at least kind of keep it on the feel of what you've been doing. This was just completely off the rail, kind of like, if Marvel had done a special issue for, some public service thing. That's kind of what it felt like, that trite. And so that's my opinion. You guys may have a different one. It just wasn't something that I enjoyed as much as I wanted to. But I'm really looking forward to getting back into the next issue. Like I said, Nick Klein's coming back. Looks like they're bringing Donald Blake back for some stuff, which really that sings to my heart, because that's how I started with Thor. And so I'm really excited about that. But these last 2 issues just wasn't for me. And again, whenever I have these, and my own opinion on it, I know other people don't agree with what I'm saying. But what do you think about it? What was your feelings on it? Do you think that this was the same tone as the rest of the story that Donny Cates has been laying down? Was it out of character to you? Because it sure felt that way to me. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Okay, so on to our next book, and here is another book that I'm disappointed in this week. I don't think I've had this many books that underwhelm me or has been disappointing in a long time, and so it's going to seem like I'm a Debbie Downer this week. I'm not. I really wanted to enjoy my comics, and I really wanted to enjoy this one. But let's just get into it. So the next book is The Walking Dead Deluxe Edition #1 by Image Comics. Of course, this is written by Robert Kirkman, art by Tony Moore, and the coloring by Dave McGeig. Now, okay, let me just tip my hat right here and say that I have never read the Walking Dead series, and that's kind of hard for me to say. Walking Dead kind of took place while I was away from comics, and it's kind of hard to say, but I know more about The Walking Dead from the TV show than I do from the comic book, and so there it is. And that's kind of hard for me to say, being a comic book guy, but that's the truth. And so when I heard that they were going to bring out this deluxe edition, but they're going to bring it out colored. I kind of felt like, that's probably a direction that, a lot of people probably foresaw coming. I do like when they go back and revamp comic books and add things to it. I loved Jim Lee's X-Men when they re-released it 2.0. I thought the coloring that they did on that job was amazing, and I really enjoyed it. I love some of the omnibuses that have come out recently. The retelling of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. The coloring on that particular series in an omnibus, I just absolutely loved. And so I was really expecting to have some type of, real dynamic coloring inside of these books. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to test it out to see what type of treatment they were going to give to these. And because really, when I'm looking at collecting this, we're talking about, another 100 or so comic books, taking up space in my collection in an area where I don't have much space left. And so do I really want another 100 comic books of something that I didn't collect in the first place, or do I just want to collect the trade paperbacks when they bring them out in color? So I checked it out. Now, I love great color, guys, and I just have to say that the colors inside of this book completely underwhelm me. If you take the cover, I'll show the cover up on the screen because it's the same colorist. The same colorist that did the main cover is the same colorist that did the interiors. And if you take and look at the main cover and look at the colors that he did on there, they're dynamic, they pop, it just looks great. David Finch does the artwork on here, and I love it. But when you look at the colors on the interior, you can see that the same treatment was not given to the book. And not only that, but there's some different rules that artists use, especially when it comes to color. And one of those rules is the rule of 3. When you have a particular place that you're coloring, you want at least 3 gradient shades to bring out that particular area to make it pop. Now, in old school comic books, you didn't see that, but in a lot of the digital work, they have the ability to do it so easily. And so usually when I don't see at least that rule of 3 being played out, it's lazy to me. And so I'm looking at the interiors, and there's some places where the rule of 3 has been applied, but there's a lot of places where it hasn't been. And it's just, 1 or 2 colors. And, it just, you can see that it doesn't have the same treatment as, something that's more dynamic. And if they're going to do that with issue 1, I pretty much guarantee they're going to do that throughout the whole series, and worse. Because a lot of times when they're trying to get to deadlines, they're rushing things, they're trying to pump things out. And if I'm going to collect a colored edition that's supposed to be, the next wave of what has already come out, I want something that's going to be special. I want something that's going to be dynamic. And just to tell you the truth, I was underwhelmed with what I saw. Now, it was great reading the story. I loved getting into that nostalgic feel that I had from the TV show, seeing Rick wake up inside of the hospital, that first meeting with Morgan, and all that stuff. I loved it. But when it comes to the colors, I was left wanting. I really wanted the interior colors to be more like that cover. And if they would have given that same treatment to the rest of the book, then maybe I would be on board to collect the rest of this series. Because I've seen what I've seen, I don't think I'll be collecting the deluxe edition going forward. I'll probably collect it in the trade paperbacks because it'll be less room in my comic collection, because I do want to read it. So there you have it, folks. Another book that I was, underwhelmed. I wanted to really love this book, but based on what I'm seeing, it's just not for me. Okay, so on to our next book, and it's Justice League number 54 by DC Comics. This one written by Joshua Williamson, art by Zermanico, never heard of that guy before, and colors by Romulo Fajardo. Okay, so here is my main man, Williamson. Of course, he's not writing on The Flash anymore. He's now on the Justice League and in the midst of the Dark Knight's Death Metal event. Of course, he wrote the Speed Metal one-shot that just came out, and but here he is writing on the Justice League, and I am loving this book. So far, this whole Dark Knight's Death Metal event has surpassed my expectations on how events normally go. I just, so far, there's not a single book that has come out that I haven't enjoyed, loved, and just been, excited to see what's going to happen next. It's bombastic, it's out there, it's comedic, and I just love it. And so here we are inside of Justice League, and we have another leg of the story. In this particular part, we have a group of our heroes, some of the heroes that are left, and they are basically going to try to take out Perpetua's throne. And Perpetua's throne is being powered by none other than the Legion of Doom. They're trapped inside of this throne. And so that's the quest, is to go free the Legion of Doom, taking the power away from Perpetua's throne. And so right from the get-go, it's just, the same goodness we had inside of the last book. I love, where Williamson is going with this. There's a feel inside of this book that kind of reminds me of taking The Wizard of Oz and just putting DC elements inside of it. There's a page inside of here that I completely geeked out over. You'll see that later on because it's going to be my panel of the week. But I'm really loving this. The adventure that they're going on, the dynamics between the characters. You have just some DC goodness, some callbacks to some things that I absolutely love, and all around this quest to free the Legion of Doom. And I'm just really, folks, I'm having such a fun time reading all these books when it comes to this crossover event. So as you know, Williamson is one of my favorite writers. He's been doing a killer job over at DC. Hated to see him go on The Flash, but I'm loving this book. The artwork by Zermanico inside here, like I said, I've never heard of him before. The line work is really great, but in this book, you're going to want to check out the colors. Fajardo, I guess, is the colorist, and the colors are dynamic inside of it. And it's just really enjoyable. So definitely check out Justice League if you haven't been. I would say that it's definitely integral to the rest of the Dark Knight's Death Metal story. So don't miss out on this one. Okay, so our next book is Firepower number 4. This one by Image Comics. Of course, this is also written by Robert Kirkman and the artwork by Chris Samney. Okay, so I'll have to admit, up until this point on this particular series, everything that's come out, issues 1, 2, and 3, have been kind of underwhelming compared to the original graphic novel that started everything off. I loved that graphic novel. I loved it so much I actually bought it for a few people because I wanted them to check it out and enjoy it. But really, issues 1, 2, and 3, they just haven't done it for me. But they're not bad. It's just really nothing happens, and the character development that's going on was just kind of it didn't seem like it was really going anywhere. I'll say this is the best of the series so far. I had a lot of fun reading this book. Of course, we still have all the ninjas in the bushes, trying to pull our main character back into the greater narrative, that's going on. And but this one is, it's amazing. There is an interchange that happens between husband and wife that it felt very real to me. I mean, I've had those conversations, and the way Robert Kirkman plays it out, it kind of seems at first like he's just toying with it, but he really gets in depth, and it's heartfelt, and I enjoyed every moment of it. And that had nothing to do with any of the kung fu or martial arts or any of the other stuff that goes on inside of this book. But the relational dynamic between the husband and wife there, I thought was so very well done over, a dinner at a classy restaurant, and just talking about their problems that they've been having. Very well done, very well done. And then at the end of this book, we do get the big action scene that happens as these ninjas basically invade the back alley of the restaurant, and we were left with a cliffhanger at the end of the book with one of the big baddies basically has the guy's wife sitting there. So can't wait for the next book. I think this is where it really takes off. I really enjoyed reading Kirkman's writing inside of this one, and Sam Nee's artwork I just love. I think it really suits this type of book well. And so, I've been on board for Firepower, just haven't enjoyed the first 3 books as much as I wanted to. But this book, definitely the best of the series so far. If you haven't been on this one, I would say this would be a good hopping on point. Most of the stuff that's happened so far, you can catch up on. But this is a great book. Check it out. Okay, so our next book is Deceased, Dead Planet, number 4. This one from DC Comics. This one written by Tom Taylor, and the artwork by Trevor Hairsine. I think that's how you say his name. Okay, so this run has been so much fun. I've loved every incarnation of Deceased that has come out yet. From the original story, then they had I forget what the 3-shot was called, but here we are with another continuation of it, basically Dead Planet. And Tom Taylor continues to blow my mind. He really stepped up his game in the last year. He's done a lot of great stuff, including the new Suicide Squad, which I'm very sad is going to be canceled. Because it is the best incarnation of Suicide Squad that I have read in a very long time. So, but here we are on issue number 4 of Deceased Dead Planet, and this is just phenomenal. It's just a fun read. Tom Taylor continues to make this title just dynamic and just something that I look forward to every month. So one of the things that's kind of been fleshed out inside of this book is that we have a possible cure to the anti-life equation, and it's in all places in Cyborg's skull that they find, and but Cyborg can't seem to access it, and so the plan is to go to New Genesis. That's right. And try to find Metron and use the Mobius chair in order to access the cure to the anti-life equation. And so that's what we have inside of this book. They go to New Genesis, and it's just a lot of fun while they're there. There's all the Kirby goodness that you'd want as far as what New Genesis is, and I just put a huge smile on my face seeing some of the characters there and the way this story fleshed out. And big reveal at the end, we get the undead version of Darkseid, and it is so glorious. I absolutely loved it. But there's comedy, there's levity, there's everything that you'd want out of a good comic book inside of this book, and especially if you've been following the story so far. I think it is, of course, an Elseworlds type story, but it is fantastic, and I just hope that Tom Taylor keeps putting out this Deceased storyline. If he continues it or goes a different way with it, I don't care, as long as he keeps writing it, because I've been enjoying it very much. Okay, and with that, we're going to move on to our pick of the week, and this week's pick of the week is Batman number 100 by DC Comics. This one written by James Tynion, art by Jorge Jimenez, and the colors by Tomu Mori. Okay, guys, I just had to go with this book because it was the most fun of all the books that I read this week. That's kind of how I've gauged this. There's been some downers as far as the reading this week. There's some books I didn't get this week that I was looking forward to reviewing. One of which was American Ronin, my LCS got shorted on that book, so I didn't get my copy. And so there's a couple others that I was hoping to read, didn't get them. But here we are, and out of everything that I did read this week, my gosh, this was a pinnacle of DC goodness right here inside of this book. You know, James Tynion has been doing just a great job on this story. I really loved it. You know, yes, we've seen the Joker, bring Gotham to its knees and basically strip Batman down to his bare minimum in only the way that the Joker can. This was done differently. I've just enjoyed the ride from the very beginning. The dialogue, the flow, everything. I mean, every book seems to end so quickly, and so much has happened inside of the book, and that's an earmark of good writing. And Jorge Jimenez, my gosh, the artwork by this guy is so dynamic and incredible. This book, really, almost every page, I was blown away. I'd turn the page and be like, oh man, that's so great. And I'm going to show some images up here on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. This is some of the best stuff in comic books being put out right now, guys. And I don't say that lightly. I love a lot of the independent stuff. I'm a comic book lover. But when you look at the composition of these pages and you look at the coloring on these pages, and that mixed up with the writing that has been so well done, and you just don't get much better than seeing stuff like this. And so really enjoyed reading this book. I thought it was a great ending to the Joker War. I thought it gave us a lot of setup for where we're going next. And I'm so on board with it, especially if they keep to this type of level of production. I mean, if they do, anything that you put out like that is going to have my vote, and I'm going to be on board with it, because it's just an absolute joy to experience, to read, to visual, just to look at. And so, not only is it my pick of the week, but this is just one of those that I want to highlight as some of the best stuff being put out in comic books. When you have a team come together and put out work like this, my hat's off to you, and I really appreciate it very much. So we have a new character that's been basically fleshed out that's going to be coming. I'm excited to see where they go with that. The whole Punchline storyline, I've enjoyed it so far, but this is not over, folks. It's going to continue. What they did with the Joker, I agree with Robbie that it really, this book was supposed to be like the finale for some of our characters, but then they had to change it. And I think he did it flawlessly, and the trajectory that we're going with this. Some of the stuff that they did with the Joker, he'll be back, of course he will, and he'll be just as glorious as he always has been. But Batman number 100, usually these 100th issues, 200th issues, usually they don't flesh out. They're not as spectacular as they make them out to be. I think the traditionally the best one that's ever come out was ASM 300. That one landed the plane, but this one, Batman number 100, definitely lands the plane. Great ending to the Joker War, and great setup for what we're going to get next. That's my pick of the week, folks. Hope you enjoyed that one yourself. If you haven't, definitely pick this up. Even if you haven't been reading the storyline, the artwork alone will blow you away. And so, yeah, I'd highly recommend it. So, Bullseye Bob's pick of the week, Batman number 100. So that's the reviews, folks. I hope you enjoyed those. Let me know, what are you reading? What did I miss this week? Maybe that I didn't get a chance to read that you did, and maybe I should be reading. Let me know what you think of those things. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, so before we end the show, we always end with my panel of the week. And this week's panel of the week came from Justice League number 54. And man, there was a page that I completely geeked out in this. I know that the title of the story was The Valley of the Starros, but I didn't even think about that or even kind of really notice the cover. And yeah, there's Starros on the cover. But there's this point where our heroes have to basically get to Perpetua's throne. They're finally on their trajectory to get there. They know Martian Manhunter's already there, and they can feel he's already in trouble, so they need to get there quick. And they come to this precipice, and they look down, and I turned the page, and here was this valley of Starros. and it just blew me away. I mean, I totally geeked out on it. I don't know why. Probably because of all the Starro stories I read from when I was younger all the way up until now. But this is that place where, talk about the Wizard of Oz with DC elements. It just reminded me of the Wizard of Oz when they have to go through the field of poppies. Well, in this particular case, our heroes have to go through a field of Starros of all things. And so there it is. That's my panel of the week. I thought it was just so much fun. Totally geeked out over it. And but yeah, there it is. So what was your panel of the week? What was the one panel in any of the books that you read that really stood out to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So that's it. That's the show, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. Always love having some comics with my coffee. Hope you enjoyed your coffee this morning as well. And of course, reading your comic books. And so I'm going to end the show there. Remember, folks, to always support your local comic shop. And Excelsior. Take care.
I'm gonna rearrange your face if you continue to debate whether Logan's claws could pierce Steve Rogers' shield.